Welcome back, guys, to our lecture on Java. Today we are going to look at another important part of the Java ecosystem, which is called the JDBC. So these are the following contents that we are going to look at under the JDBC. So the JDBC specification. So what is the JDBC? JDBC stands for Java Database Connectivity, which is actually a specification of standard application program API that allows Java program to access database management systems. That's it. Anything that has to do with connecting to a database, accessing data from a database, you'll find it in the JDBC specification. Then the JDBC API consists of a set of interfaces and classes written in Java programming language that will aid you to be able to query the database in the Java language. As of this recording, the latest stable version of JDBC is JDBC 4.3. So the JDBC, as we said, it's a specification, which means it's an abstraction. You can say, think of it like that. Then it has the implementations or the vendors in industry term. So the way you connect or you talk to a database between DBMSs, several DBMSs, I mean database management system, is different. It differs based on the database. Like the way you will do SQL to Oracle will be different from the way you do it with MySQL. But they are all different databases. And for their own JDBC implementation, they are coding to the same specification, but they have different databases. So we have Oracle, we have Informix, we have SQL, we have DB2, MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server from Microsoft, we have CBase. So these are what we call the vendors that give us the implementation of the JDBC specification. For instance, in here in my Maven Palm, I have added this driver, which is actually an implementation of the JDBC, and this is it. If you open this, you'll see that it consists of a lot of things in here, a lot of classes, and that are actually part of that. So if I was to say, let me look for connection. As you can see, connection is an interface. Since I have MySQL driver in the class path, if I look for the implementation of this connection interface, I will obviously find one of the implementations listed in this jar file or driver. So let me just do that. So if you can see, I'm already finding the implementations in there, in that particular jar file. As you can see, they are all in that jar file, which means this is the spec that comes with Java, but the implementation is outside. And then now, as to how it actually finds it, we will see as we proceed with our slides. Then this is the architecture. So you see that at the top level, we have your Java application. Then we have JDBC APIs, which I just showed you now. Then we have the JDBC DriverManager, which is a class that comes with the JDBC specification that is given to you. You don't have to code it. That We will see what it does. Then below it, we see we have all different JDBC drivers. And one of it, we just saw it now, it's MySQL. And just below, it's a database. The API has connection, DriverManager, driver, statement, PreparedStatement, CallableStatement, ResultSet. Then connection. Connection interface represents a connection from an application to a database. So you get a connection. And what helps you to get a connection? In the code, to get a connection, you use a DriverManager. So this DriverManager, obviously, to connect to a database, you must have a database URL, which is a combination of the protocol that, the URL has a protocol that you must follow to create it. You'll always have JDBC, MySQL, and followed by the host, the port, if it's there, then database name, and other things. Then you have the username and the password to connect to that particular database management system. So the DriverManager will obtain a collection for you. So if you come here, I just want to show you that there's something that we mentioned earlier on called the service loader that will actually go and look for the implementations for you and load them into memory, and you are able to get the implementation and use it. All right, that's it with the connection. Then connecting to a database. There are four things you need. You need to get a connection to a database, create a statement object, then use that statement object, execute an SQL query, process a result set. Those are the things that you normally would do. Then connecting to a database. So we saw that we require a URL, and the format, you have this JDBC, it's always the same. You have a sub-protocol and the subname. So we see that the JDBC is the same for all DBMSs. Sub-protocol differs depending on the DB used. E.g., we used MySQL. Then the subname format, obviously you see that we have a server, then we have the port, then you have the database. Examples that we see here, we see Postgres, local DB, MySQL, localhost, see the 3236, and you have DB. You can also omit this default port if you want. Then you have JDBC Oracle. This is the way you create a connection URL to the database. Then the DriverManager. We saw that with the DriverManager, we used connection.getConnection, and then we used this as a string, as a URL, a string to get the connection. Then we have another one where we have URL, then we have properties. Then we have URL, user, and password. So we can look into what we already have in that class. So we see that here we have URL, and then we have username and password. So basically we are using the last one here. But you can also decide to use this one, in which everything stays in one URL. Or you can use this one, properties. So let's see how we use this one to get a connection. So you see we create properties, then we give it properties. You get the URL like this, then you have P as this. So if you were to use the first one here, the URL, you will probably do something like this. Let me just say, just your URL. You'll probably say this equals to this, and then here you say maybe user equals to root and password equals to blessing, and Then you remove all these things, and then you have your URL. So what I want to do now, I just want to check if this will work, but I believe that's how you can use it. So instead of using this one, we're going to use this one. Let's run this code and see. Okay, it says table already exists. That means we were able to connect to the database. So let's give the wrong password, blessing1 or maybe K, just to see that it does work. So we see the password is wrong. So that is what I was explaining. But we can see when we have a long URL like this, it's a bit not clean, not readable. Then we have we establish a connection between user and the JDBC driver. So this is what the DriverManager does. It establishes a connection and it keeps track of data sources, searches for suitable drivers. We saw there where we are searching for a suitable driver with a service loader. Then we see it manages multiple concurrent drivers connected to their data sources. And in real applications, use data source, not DriverManager, to get a connection. This is what you see with when you're programming with applications like frameworks like Spring. They use a data source, not a DriverManager. So DriverManager knows that a jar file is a driver because it contains a java.sql.driver in the meta-inf service direct. So if we come here and we also interrogate our SQL driver here, we see that in the meta-inf we have services, we have this java.sql driver. So every driver, JDBC driver, has this file, and then that file contains one important information. So it says inside this there is a line with fully qualified name of the driver implementation. So if we go there and open this, we'll see that we have a fully qualified name of this. So if we click here, it will give us that driver implementation, and we see that it actually implements the driver that is specified in the JDBC specification, and this is an interface. So you see we have this two implementation. This is the one that we see driver, and the driver one that we saw implements no register driver and all that. But that is not where we are. We will see these things when we are coding, doing the actual demonstration of the code. Then data source benefits. We saw that Oracle recommends using the data source, not the DriverManager. The data source will hide connection details from the applications. It will maintain a pool of connections that can be reused. Then the Java docs says data source is preferred over data manager. There could be many other data source benefits that are not in the slides. Then querying the database. So we see that after establishing a connection to your database, operations can be performed. And JDBC provides interfaces to perform operations. Which one interface is that? The statement. And statement is the top of the hierarchy. Then below the statement, we have what we call PreparedStatement. Then we have CallableStatement. All these things give us some individual features that others do not have. So statement. Statement used to create basic SQL statements in Java. It provides method to execute queries with the database. Sends an SQL statement to the database without any parameters. So these are some of the methods you will find in a statement. you see that you just have pure SQL that you are passing here, and you don't provide parameters. We will see what we mean by that. So you are not recommended to use this interface. Then there's prepared statement. A prepared statement, we saw that it inherits from statement, and it represents a pre-compiled SQL statement. It is used to execute a parameterized query, which is clean and readable, more efficient than a statement object when querying multiple times. Why? Because of pre-compilation of SQL statement. Then we can use prepared statement to avoid SQL injection attacks, as we will see in the code demonstration. Then we have callable statements. This one is actually used for executing stored procedures. We see that when you're executing stored procedures, we can have input parameters, output parameters, or a parameter that is both input and output. So with statement, we see that the three methods that we showed you guys, that you can, this is actually what execute method can do. It can allow you to delete, insert, select, and update. SQL execute query will not allow you to execute a delete SQL. It will not allow you to execute an insert. It will not allow you to execute an update, but it will allow you to execute a select. Why? Because it only allows SQL statement that returns back a result set. But delete, insert, and update, they don't return a result set. Then execute update, it allows you to do everything except select. It doesn't return any result set. It just execute an update. So if you use delete, insert, update with execute query, you will get an exception, an SQL exception. So statement, like I said, in industry, applications use subclasses of statement. And the reason being for performance. We saw that prepared statement has that pre-compilation. You can have things like execution plans in place. We saw security, that you can have named parameters to escape SQL injection with prepared statement. But with statement, you cannot have that. I will demonstrate a situation where an application or someone can exploit you and pass an injection to your SQL as a parameter. Then we see readability. You don't need to use string interpolation to create your SQL statements. Then ResultSet. ResultSet is one important interface in the JDBC. A ResultSet maintains a cursor pointing to the current row. So when you retrieve data from a database, you have data in rows. So when you move from one row to another, you use a cursor, and that is found inside via the ResultSet. And it can read only one row at a time. Iterating a ResultSet outside a try with resource block will throw an exception. Why? Because the ResultSet object is already closed. I will also demonstrate this as well. Then the JDBC automatically closes a ResultSet when another SQL statement is executed from the same statement. This we will see in the illustration. Then these are some of the methods you will find in a ResultSet. ResultSet.absolute, which will take the cursor, you pass it a value, an int, which will take a cursor to the row that you are specified based on either the beginning or the end. So if you give it a positive number, let's say 2, it will take the cursor to row number 2, starting from the beginning. If you pass it a negative number, it will, let's say -2, it will start from the last row and go backwards 2 times. Then we have relative. This one will take a cursor to to the number that you're pointing relative to the current point where it's pointing. So if a cursor is pointing on the row number 2, then you pass it maybe 3. It will go three steps to the forward. If you pass it -3, it will go 3 steps backward. But that is also provided that your result set is navigable, because you can also pass when you're creating your statement, you can mention that this can also, you can give a result set mode in which you say, I want to only the cursor to move forward only. You can specify a situation where you say a cursor can move only in forward direction. That is, if you didn't specify that, then these methods are going to work fine for you. Then you say first moves the cursor to the first row, last moves the cursor to the last row. We have other methods like after last, before first, or something like that. So those methods, you can also review them to see what they do. Then I already spoke about this one, result set type mode. We see that you can say, if you say statement s equals to connect dot create statement, then you say first and second. First says result set type, and the second parameter says result set concurrency mode. So we see that the result set type could be type scrollable, or type scrollable sensitive, type scrollable insensitive, or could be type forward only. And when it's type scrollable sensitive, it means what happens when data changes in the DB while scrolling, while you're iterating. It means if that happens, you will see the latest changes. So it's sensitive to the changes. The one that is insensitive, it will always give you a static view. You don't see changes. The one that says type forward only, it means the result set object cursor can only move only in forward direction. Then also you have result set mode, which has 2 parameters, or two values. It can be read only or concur updatable. So if it's read only, it means this is the constant indicating the concurrency mode for result set object that may not be updated. It means result set can be updated, it can be inserted, you can't perform any delete using a result set. So if it's updatable, the constant indicating the concurrency mode for a result set object that may be updated. So you find that with the result set, you can perform an update. But you find that why are we talking about this? Let's say your initial query was select all from employees or something like that. Initially, you have a select. You can use that to perform an update or an insert or even a delete. This is what we mean by an updatable result set. If you request one of this mode and the mode, let's say you want updatable and it's not supported by the driver, the request may be downgraded to read only. Then you have transaction. What is a transaction? A transaction is a unit of work. So by default, new connections, when you say, when you do this, you say DriverManager.get connection. By default, what is returned to you is in auto commit mode. That means all its SQL statements will be executed and committed as individual transactions. It will not wait for other transactions before the determination of whether it will commit is made. And then the way you control that, you can say connection.set auto commit. You can set it to false to say that disable auto commit, which would mean that transactions now are not automatically committed for you. If you set it to true, it means they will be automatically committed for you. Then if you use this commit method, makes all changes made since the previous commit or rollback permanent and releases any database logs currently held by this connection object. And this method should be used only when the auto commit mode has been disabled. Then you have rollback, which undo all changes made in the current transaction and releases any database logs currently held by this connection object. And this method also can be used only when the auto commit mode has been disabled.